The Broad Perspective Network is not responsible for the content of the following program. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to The Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Kamori.
And I'm Katie Curley-Nelson.
We're glad you're with us today. We're going to be joined after our first commercial break by a very, very interesting gentleman all the way from Melbourne, Australia, by the name of Santos Bonacci. And I have to say, what we have been learning about him and in preparing for our interview is just amazing, over-the-top information, cutting-edge stuff that I am just so excited about this interview. I cannot wait. What you think, Katie?
Oh, it's an honor to be able to talk to this man. For us to get this interview with him, this is somebody who gets it on, to me, just about every level.
Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking cosmic level, but on every level. And cosmic's actually appropriate because he's actually Mr. Astrotheology is a moniker that he goes by,
Right.
Which is, I believe, very appropriate due to the YouTube videos that I've watched of his where he's explaining astrology and astronomy and how all these things work and theology. And it's mind-blowing.
I never knew there was an astrotheology.
I know, I do
until
now.
until I was reading about him
Right.
and how he ties it all in together. It's amazing. I can't wait to talk to him.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And he's a great guy. He's also, from what I've learned with my research, he's a guitar player, quite
musician,
adept.
yeah.
So I don't know if we'll actually get into talking about that, but just another one of his many facets of brilliance.
Pretty talented from what I read. I didn't hear the music, but pretty
Yes.
talented from what I've heard. So.
Yes, that's the gist I get from it as well. So we want to remind people to please check out our website, which will be changing very soon.
Very exciting.
Yes,
New changes.
We're working on it. But you can go to www.thebroadperspective.com and see what we have going on, what we have up our sleeves. And you can also check out the archives at that site. And anyone who's been on the Broad Perspective and the Broad Perspective Network will be in the archives. And just click on the Listen Up button and it'll take you where you need to go.
And don't forget, we can get on Facebook if you want to interact with us. If you have questions about the shows or you have, anything that you want to get out there, any comments, you can always join us on Facebook as well.
See, and that's Katie's forte. She's really good at all that kind of stuff. I'm just kind of going, oh, good, yeah, good.
Trying to stay connected. That's all we're trying to do.
There you go. So don't forget those things. And what's our Broaden Your Horizons segment for today, Katie?
Well, thinking of our guest and what we're going to be talking about, I thought it was good if we talk about know thyself. And I know you've talked about this before, and it just maybe kind of get in depth into knowing who we really are.
That is the key to everything. If there was one thing I would say to anybody, get real acquainted with who you are. And I'd venture guess that most people don't have a clue. They just think they do.
We all think we know who we are because
Right.
we've known ourselves our whole lives.
Yeah.
But do we really get in depth into our own psyche?
Do we see ourselves as other people see us? And who are we when the going gets tough? And I know for me personally, I've been on one of these quests to become acquainted with the real essence of who Vivian is. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I haven't liked some of it. As I've come to terms with what I've realized about myself, I've really had to do some waking up and to make some changes.
Yeah.
And to come face to face with some of my idiosyncrasies and some of my less stellar qualities that I really wouldn't want to acknowledge. But now that I do, and I realize what those things are that I'm not too proud of, how do you then become different, or how do you work within those parameters to be a different person? I don't want to manifest jealousy, but I do. I don't want to manifest envy, but I do envy sometimes. So there's these human qualities that I heretofore probably would say I've denied, haven't acknowledged for sure, and I'm waking up to.
Well, acknowledging them, I think, is important, but not judging them so much. Because I think that if we can do it without judgment, then we can see the truth in it, the learning experience, because really that's what it is. Anything that we see negative about ourselves or that we're projecting off others is something that we need to learn from So I don't think you should judge it or beat yourself up. I think you look at it for what it is, be aware of it, and know who you are, and try and live outside of that. I don't want to say construct. I know we use that a lot. But, live outside of that way of thinking.
And understand how it affects others, perhaps. Maybe,
Definitely.
Maybe.
Everything we do affects others, so for sure.
See, that's why I love you, Katie, because you really bring a perspective that sometimes I don't think about, or maybe our listeners don't think about. And this is the wonderful thing about having a co-host, and it's people that we can play back and forth off of, because it provides insights for ourselves that other people might be able to relate to as well.
And that's like what you're saying is that we, knowing yourself, but how do you see yourself the way other people see? That was such a good question, because most people don't see themselves the same way. They have this image of themselves. Who knows? A lot of times that's where the ego comes in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We have this image, but I think others probably see us much differently. It's like when I hear people record their voice. Do you ever notice that?
Oh, yeah.
People are like, is that what I sound like? It's almost like that same kind of thing where you are so in it, you can't see outside of it.
Very true.
Very same thing. And most people don't like the sound of their voice.
Very true.
Isn't that
and
funny?
I was at a meeting last night with some friends, and one of my girlfriends said, I wish so-and-so would have been here to hear this. He really needed to hear this. And knowing the person that she was referring to, I made the comment back to her, he may have heard it, but I don't think he would have really heard it. I don't think he would have seen himself with the way you thought he would, think he would see himself in this message that was being delivered, because people don't often see themselves.
Sometimes they hear it, but they're not really listening.
Exactly. That's it. Exactly. Yeah. So I thought, okay, that's an interesting take on that whole situation. And we do that with a lot of times. We say, oh, this would have been so good for so-and-so. They would have gotten so much out of this. Well, the reality is they may not have. They'd be going, what am I doing here? Yeah, this isn't
It's like
me.
when you send somebody information, you're like, oh my gosh, you're going to love this. And they come back and they're like, yeah, what is this about? I have no interest in this. It's like, obviously, you had a different take on it than they did.
Exactly. So it's really all for us. And of course,
it's all about us.
It's all about us. That's
know thyself, love thyself. It's all about us.
Yeah. And forgive thyself. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a big one. So big. Self-forgiveness. I'm still trying to figure that out, but I think that's a big one.
That's huge.
It is huge.
That's absolutely huge. And I think anybody who's trying to do any type of life-changing, altering, evaluation, reflecting, absolutely just forgive yourself, forgive others, or what you think others have done to you, because as we know, we've created it all.
Yes.
So you forgive everybody. It's just cleanse and cleanse and cleanse. And you can't, I don't think, do it enough.
Right.
It's not a one-time thing. Okay, I'm forgiven. I forgive. I'm forgiven. I think it's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. And I think that's also part and parcel to something, well, maybe next week, because we're about out of time in this segment of this show, but we can talk about a little bit more. This is probably the most important advice that we can give to anybody in this time, and we are in some challenging times for humanity and for our planet. There's a lot going on, is to really know who you are, get real comfortable with who you are, because as more challenges come back down the pike, you may be shocked at how you react. And if you don't know yourself, it may not be pretty.
That's amazing how you say that's the one thing that you would pass on to anybody. Yeah. And like you say, is it the Oracle Delphi, right?
Right.
So obviously somebody else had that very same thought. If this is the one thing I want to pass on for generations and generations, that would be the one thought, is to know thyself.
That's it. That's it. And so perhaps on next week's show, when Katie and I do our little talk, we can chat about that just a little bit more, on how we can become a little bit more in tune with ourselves. So in the meantime, stay tuned, because we're going to come back from our commercial break in just a minute and be joined by this very wonderful, insightful, brilliant man from Melbourne, Australia, by the name of Santos Bonacci. So stay tuned for more of The Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network.
Do you ever wake up and ask yourself what's really going on in the world you live in? It's time for you to be aware. It's the #1 alternative website on the planet. TruthIsScary.com. Daily stories. Log on daily to get the latest information on the stories that radio and TV wouldn't dare to cover. Experience our curriculum with over 20 topics from government conspiracies and extraterrestrials to meditation and nutrition. Celebrity interviews. Watch exclusive videos with your favorite celebrities and find out what their alternative views are. It's your source for the information you won't find in the mainstream media. It's TruthIsScary.com. Log on today and be aware. TruthIsScary.com.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to The Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Kamori.
And I'm Katie Curley Nelson.
And Santos Bonacci is joining us now all the way from Melbourne, Australia. And I'll tell you what, I'm so excited about this interview.
I know, me too.
This guy is brilliant. Santos, I am so grateful that you're taking your time. I know it's early in the morning over there, and you're so kind to speak with us today. Your information is, well, it's over the top. There's so much there, but it's also kind of given me some hope, which I haven't had a whole lot of with all the things that are going on in the world, and those of us who paying attention to world signs, and there's so much information out there, but it's all very negative stuff. And what you do is you present us with what's really going on. The basic information I take away from a lot of it is it's a way to know ourselves, and I've been talking about that. Who are you? It's time to figure out who you are and to know yourself, and I think you do it in a much more scientific way than the way I address it. But I'm very grateful for you and what you're presenting to us. Welcome to the Broad Perspective.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the very kind introduction. You're very kind, and appreciate the positive feedback on the videos and what I'm trying to achieve, because you're spot on. I'm trying to help people to reclaim their dominion, like the prodigal son when he returns back to his father. And he is blessed with many more blessings when he returns. It's a great parable. And
it is a great parable, yeah.
Yes, and that's what I'm trying to achieve. That people can see how to know themselves. The science of as above, so below, which is in all of our holy scriptures. There is no Bible, there is no book out there that is better than the other books. They're all equal, and they all teach the holy science. And if I can get that across to people with my videos and with the natural sine wave, the sine wave of nature, as the sun's ecliptic goes through the 12 signs of the zodiac, we have our physics, chemistry, everything springs from there. Our gospels, our legends, our stories, nursery rhymes, everything is in that little sine wave, in that little, what I call the key to understanding the holy science.
Well, it is a key. On so many levels, I think that you have taken astronomy and astrology to a whole different level of understanding, at least for me. Now, having said that, I think it's a science. It's mathematics. It's science. It's that left brain logical stuff, which I have a real hard time with. Even though I get it, I understand the general message of what you're saying, is still a lot of information and a lot of that hemisphere of my brain that doesn't function so well. So I have to work a little bit harder at understanding it than probably maybe the average person. I don't know. But
it's deep stuff.
It's deep. It is deep.
But you define it as astrotheology, right?
Astrotheology is a big part of it. Astrology is another big part of it. What I'm doing is busting, what I call busting the big fictions, busting the fictions. You see, this world has been run by good old Rome. Rome runs the whole system. The capitalism comes from there, the calendar comes from there, the Julian/Gregorian calendar. The alphabet that we all use all around the world comes from Rome. It's the Latin script. The justice systems of all the court systems of every country in the world have been usurped by canon law, by the law of the high seas, which comes from Rome. It's commercial law. It's business. Rome is a business. It's a corporation. founded by Julius Caesar, or his son, Augustus. And the common era, what we call the Anno Domini, Annus Dominis, or Anno Domini calendar, is not pinned to a human Christ Jesus Saviour, as they tell you in our universities. It's pinned to Caesar Augustus. And I've proven this in my videos. In fact, I did a presentation on Sunday, 2 days ago. And it'll be on YouTube. Please, listeners, look out for it. It'll be my newest offering.
Okay.
And in there, I show how all of this system is run by Rome, and the calendar is pinned to Caesar Augustus. And I give the proofs. If you see coins of, if you've ever seen coins of Caesar Augustus, you'll see the image of him, usually with a crown of thorns.
Yes.
And he was adored as a god. One only needs to read Alexander Del Mar's book about Caesar, the worship of Caesar Augustus. And there's other fine works. Joseph Atwill, the Piso family have now come out from Rome, the Piso family from Pisa, Italy, who have had emperors on since the Flavians in 70 CE. Since the Flavians, the Pisos have ruled Rome. This is the Rothschilds of Rome, people.
Right.
The Rothschilds are also a branch of these elites, these Khazarians that came from the east to conquer the west, and they have. They've been in charge of the west for 2,000 years, making sure that the west does not rise spiritually as it's supposed to, on cue and in time with the age of procession. And they have been medicating us, poisoning us, indoctrinating us, killing us, murdering the truth, shutting down all the pagan temples. They created a fictional religion based on a fictional person, Jesus Christ, who, when you read the Gospels, you realize immediately, if you've got a shred of intelligence, that the Gospels are talking about the sun and the 12 signs of the zodiac being the apostles of Jesus.
Right.
Just as Jacob has his 12. And when you look at the names and the meanings of those 12 at in the book of Genesis, chapter 49, is the first horoscope in history. And there Jacob is blessing his sons before he dies, his 12 sons. Right. And the description he gives of those sons harmonize perfectly with the 12 signs of the zodiac, which in Job 38:32, clearly they call it the Mazzaroth, the Hebrews. Mm-hmm. And they are hiding this fact. And how can you hide it? You would have to be an absolute moron not to see that the Bible is based purely on astronomy and astrology. You'd have to be a moron. I mean, you go to church to a pastor, to listen to the pastor. Well, in Greek, that means from the stars. Minister, which is a derivative of moon and star. So the minister, the pastor, preaches his filthy, counterfeited doctrine into your ears, but he still follows the old religion, and he's still a pastor. He's still an Astor. He's just a phony because he doesn't know the origins of his religion, and it's nature and the stars, the wheel above, as above, so below. And so you have a bishop. You go to a deacon.
Yeah.
What's a deacon? Well, it's 10 degrees of the 360-degree arc of the circle. It's a deacon. This is all from astrology. My goodness. And you have an elder. Well, what's the elder? Well, that's wouldn't that be the Elohim of the Bible?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the angel, Gabriel, Michael, Uriel, Samael, Israel.
See, for those of us, though, that are open to this, it makes perfect sense. But most people have bought into the construct. They've bought into what has been presented to them their entire existence and the history that we know, at least at this point. And so to think outside that box is really, really sometimes beyond what some people are willing to do. And it takes a really open mind and someone who is willing to do something different and to think, again, outside the box. I've said many times to people, it's not about walking the middle of the road. It's not whether you're right or left or thinking I've got to go down the middle. It's really about thinking outside that construct that we have all been raised in. And that's what you've done. Yeah. You've taken us outside the construct.
Yes, well, Vivian, you mentioned at the outset that you're enjoying the information, but it's deep.
Yeah, it is.
And you mentioned how our schooling has, you see, our schooling is responsible for this because they've taught us what to think, not how to think.
Exactly.
And if they could only harness that beautiful, godlike glow that children have when they're 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and then 12 is when it's all over,
yes.
Then they change. But if they can grab those children at that age and teach them intuitively and teach them how the child is destined to learn,
right?
Then we would understand these things. See, I'm very, very fortunate. I was able to think for myself, even though I was a Jehovah's Witness for 20 years and I did the party line. I was a really good Jehovah's Witness. I mean, I pioneered for 4 years. Yeah, I did all that. 90 hours a month, going to people's doors and trying to say them to Jesus and telling them, don't go to the Mormons, don't go to the Pentecostals, don't go to the Baptists, the Catholics, the Orthodox, the Presbyterian, the Methodists, and the other 29,990 registered Christian denominations. Just come to us. We have the truth. Oh, yes, the truth.
The truth. See, I know. The truth.
That truth is opinion. It's belief. When they tell you the pastor tells you, you have to believe in Jesus. Don't doubt. So if you keep people in the state of believing rather than in the condition of knowing, well, you're going to have buffoons that you can lead sheep to the slaughter, and you're going to be able to make sheep out of those people. You're going to be able to fleece them. You're going to be able to pull the wool over their eyes. And you're going to be able to tell them, you continue being good little sheep of Jesus and coming to this church, okay? You just keep coming to this church and be good little sheep, because we are fleecing you, and the Illuminati elite families are the ones who are behind all of the Christian corporate denominations, all of them. And they all have their own interpretation of the Bible, filed away, almost like a patent, if you like. The Jehovah's Witnesses have a patent on their bullshit, and the rest of the buffoons, they have their patents, and none of them know that Jesus Christ is hiding right there within us, like the Apostle Paul said.
Right.
There is nothing without that is greater than what is within. And when we know this, then you know who you are, and you stand in honor and competence when you go to court. You stand in your responsibility as a man standing up ready to return to God, to the cause, and leave this material world, like the prodigal son who says, oh my God, where have I found myself? I've been sleeping with prostitutes and drinking with fools, and the food that my father gives the swine in his kingdom is better than what I'm eating out here. So that's us. We've come down to this land of illusions where there's a priest on every corner.
Yes.
And pedophile ones too, because they love abuse. They don't only take great pleasure in spiritually depriving you of your spirituality and teaching you lies and filth and abusing your emotions and your spirit and your soul by stealing your power away from you with their hypnotism. They also delight in doing it physically, sexually, because they're perverted. They're sick. They delight in teaching foolish fictions like the devil is out there and Satan is God's enemy, and they don't understand any of the science. The only Satan that is out there is the magnetic forces of the universe. And the only Jesus that is out there is the positive forces of the universe. And this is the duality universe that exists under the ether, sub-ether, where the cause is, where all the patterns are for the matter. You see, when you look at the word pattern, it comes from pater, which means father, and when you look at matter, that comes from mother. Oh. So the patterns come from the invisible, and the matter comes from the material, and that is the dualistic world that we live in. It is a universe, it is a oneness, God is a oneness, but God, the demiurge, is a two-ness. It's a duality. And it's electricity and magnetism, and that is the enemy. One resists the other, one helps the other. They cannot exist separately, and the whole universe is pure electricity. That's all it is. The stars, all those galaxies we see out there, and the Birkeland currents. The Birkeland currents are the beautiful currents that charge the whole electric universe. And our professors in our universities are spewing out their filth too, because they are manipulated and dominated and sodomized by the elites too. So they have to teach you that Newton was right. And Newton was not right, he was wrong. He was wrong because he was a man who studied the effects and not the causes. Walter Russell, the American genius who was a contemporary of Einstein, clearly debunks Newton. He debunked him in his book, which I have right now in my hands, called A New Concept of the Universe, Walter Russell.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, and I would suggest that anybody who wants to understand the solar system, who wants to understand the universe, the as above, so below, you would have to read this book. You would simply have to read this book. Let me just read a passage, can I?
You can, but we're going to have to take it. Wait until we come back from the commercial break, okay? Because we're getting the signal. We need to take a commercial, and then we'll come back to reading that passage. So hang in there. We'll be back in just a minute with more of the Broad Perspective and Santos Bonacci. Stay tuned.
Would you like to have your very own radio show on the Broad Perspective Network? Well, now you can. Find out more at 661-480-6787. That's 661-480-6787 for your radio show on the Broad Perspective Network.
Welcome back to the Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network. We're visiting with Santos Bonacci, and he was getting ready to read us a passage out of a book by Russell. What was the last name again?
Walter Russell.
Walter Russell.
Yes.
Okay, so take it away.
Okay, so he obviously was familiar with consensus atomic theory, because this is what he has to say.
Okay.
Now, of course, please research Walter Russell. There's some YouTube beautiful short productions about the life of Walter Russell and the genius that he was. When he was a child, he experienced the opening of his third eye.
Oh, wow.
And he relates this. He tells how he was blessed. He was blessed to have a very precocious awakening. And he saw nature. He could see nature in its glory and its simplicity and how it works so simply. And this is what he had to say. I mean, the book is full of jewels like this.
Okay.
The scientist has not only divided matter into 92 different kinds of substances, he has divided these 92 substances into atomic systems made up of many more minute particles of somewhere around 20 primal substances. These he calls electrons, protons, neutrons, antineutrons, antiprotons, mesons, negative mu mesons, positive mu mesons, negative pi mesons, neutral pi mesons, tau mesons, positive V particles, negative V particles, neutral V particles, and so on, without an end as yet in sight of the many non-existent substances.
Wow.
I'm reading deliberately slowly because if you can comprehend the impact of this this passage, it will just blow your mind as to why the scientists continue to be more stupid and teach rubbish that is just so draconian. It is so antiquated. He goes on to say, they so convincingly act their parts in producing the mirages of substance in this universe that the greatest scientists of this world have not the slightest suspicion that the many different substances of matter are but different states of motion.
Wow.
See, matter is motion. That's all it is.
Right.
Energy,
Motion.
vibration.
Yes, and I explain in my videos on astrotheology that mind is 12-fold. It's a dodecahedron. Universe is mind, one of the Hermetic axioms. Universe is mind. Universe is mental. Mind over matter. Matter is 7-fold. It's an octave. There are 7 musical notes. There are 7 planets in the solar system that we see with our physical eyes. There are 7 chakras in the human organism.
Right.
There are 7 colors of the rainbow. There are 7 Elohim who say, let us make man in our image. 7 days of the week. There is 7 in creation, intrinsically, essentially. It is a part of the material nature, the mother, matter. Matter is 7-fold and spirit is 12-fold. And that is the great secret of nature. It's so simple. And it all is electricity and magnetism. The genius Edward Leeds Scalman said that atomic theory is all wrong. And he said everything is magnets. Everything you see is magnets, little magnets.
Wow.
And another myth of the solar system is that the planets orbit on the same plane as the sun. They orbit the sun. Mm-hmm. Well, this is a lie. They orbit, but they don't orbit around the sun. They orbit with the sun.
Oh.
Yes. This is also what this genius, Walter Russell, teaches. He says that the sun is at the apex of a vortex. And also the Indian teacher who died 20 years ago, I think, Dr. Keshava Bhatt, he was teaching this vortex solar system. And as the sun is corkscrew spiraling through the heavens with its companion star Sirius, its binary star, and you have Walter Crittenden there in California, Vivian. You have the Binary Research Institute in California.
Okay.
And Walter Crittenden, he wrote the book The Lost Star of Myth and Time, in which he proves beyond a doubt, in my opinion, that we're in a binary with Sirius. And he gives many proofs, and I use his book in my presentations to prove it. And as it spirals and corkscrews through the heavens, this is how all the celestial bodies work, according to Walter Russell. Our planet, like all the planets in the solar system, increases its rotational speed and decreases its orbital speed.
Okay.
And it does this forever. It has been doing this since it began, since it was ejected from the sun's belt, from the sun's equator. This is according to Walter Russell. Okay, now that's how the planets come from the sun, and then they continue spiraling in the wake of the sun's magnetic field, in the vortex. And they, in turn, Mercury is the first planet, then Venus, then the Earth, then Mars, then Jupiter, then Saturn, etc. And they all follow, and their orbits all increase in orbital time. Mercury is 88 days, Venus 225 days, Mars, the Earth is 365 days, etc., etc.
Right.
We all know this, and so our Earth was much smaller once, and there was one continent called Pangaea on the Earth.
Yes.
And as it increases its rotation, it increases its centripetal force. And as it decreases its orbital speed, it increases its centrifugal force. So it maintains a balance. And it grows in size. And therefore, it will not fly off on a tangent. It will stay true to its orbit as it increases in speed, you see. And scientists know this. This is why they erroneously say that the Chile earthquake and the Japan earthquake have caused the Earth to spin a little bit faster and straighten the tilt of the Earth. This is only half of the truth.
Okay, so what is the truth?
Well, the truth is that it's the speeding of the rotation and the straightening of the axis of the Earth, which is causing the effect, which is earthquakes. Because the crust of the Earth has to straighten as the Earth grows. And this is causing the continental shift and all of this, all of these earthquakes. But another truth that they're hiding from us is the fact that the axis of the Earth does not stay fixed at 23.5 degrees. This is absolute nonsense. All planets rotate their axis, their spin axis, 360 degrees continuously.
Okay.
The Earth's axis is straightening because that's what it does. In 140,000 years, the axis of the Earth will be at 0 degrees, and we will have a one-season year. But it appears that what's going to take place in the next year or so is probably going to straighten that tilt really, really quickly. And the seasons have already changed.
Right.
They've absolutely changed. There's no doubt about it. And the stars of heaven have shifted. There's been a shift. People all around the world are noticing this, astronomers. I've been fixing my eyes on the stars and the zodiac and their positions, the position of the sun setting for years. And I've seen it with my own eyes. I can testify to the fact that the stars, something's moved. It's either the axis of the Earth has straightened more than what they're telling us, or something else is going on. But anyway.
And this is just a normal system, right? This is just how it works.
This is absolutely how it works according to Walter Russell and many, 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 many other men who are not consensus scientists. One might want to look at the website Thunderbolts Project.
Thunderbolts Project?
Yeah, Thunderbolts. They are the best scientists, the very, very best scientists for teaching the truth of plasma cosmology, of the electric universe. Wallace Thornhill in Australia is a scientist, and he heads the scientific part of this group, and David Talbot and Don Scott, I think, are the names of the mythologists who have uncovered a lot of truth in these so-called myths of the Hindus and the Egyptians and the Greeks, and they've discovered that those myths were science, and so they are merging all these ancient myths with Wallace Thornhill's beautiful explanation, which harmonizes with Walter Russell about this electric universe in which we live. It's simple. It's so simple. It's just electricity and magnetism. And all of those atoms, like the suns, as above, so below, are spinning in vortexes. And Walter Russell eloquently explains this in his book, and it's a must-read. What can I say? It's a must-read. Once you understand how the science has been stolen from us, the truth in science, in law, and in religion, and you bust these three fictions, because the elites have counterfeited these three to steal our dominion from us, to steal our sovereignty and our godship.
And they've done a good job. They've done a good job at convincing humanity and creating these constructs that the majority of the world buys into, the huge majority.
And this is what, enslavement, basically?
I think so.
It's lawful slavery. They outlawed unlawful slavery in 1815, but they didn't tell you that in the contract, when you register your birth certificate and marriage certificate and all the other flippin' certificates and registrations that we apply for, beg for, we're just buying into their services. They're just a bunch of crooks that have got services. It's like the mafia. When the mafia comes a-knocking, you can rest assured that they're going to offer you a service.
Right.
Everybody has a service. This is the land, the valley of deep shadow, in which the prodigal son comes down, dips down to sleep with the prostitutes and drink with the boys and get intoxicated. Now, the intoxication is spiritual. It's spiritual intoxication. You see, we are drinking of the cup of the whore of Babylon.
Yeah.
We are drinking the intoxication. Rome comes along and says, we're going to sodomize you, whether you like it or not. We've got an inquisition, we've got armies, we've got police forces, we've got everybody in our pay. And we're going to offer you our service of protection. And you will pay for it. Taxes, rates, charges, registrations, fees. You're going to cop it. And spiritually they also debase us with lies and stolen the true identity of the Christ within and given us a historical one. Oh, he came 2,000 years ago. Oh, and he's coming back. But in the meantime, we're just going to sodomize you because he's not here. He's been and he's coming. He's always coming.
Right. Yeah.
And these churchgoers must be saved from this delusion.
Right.
And must be saved. Because it does not help them or serve them to persist in their denial of the true Christ. In fact, they will say, as Matthew chapter 7 says, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and expel demons in your name and perform many miracles in your name? You ask the Pentecostals how many miracles they pull off. They are real tricksters, those ones. And yet I will say to you, get away from me, you workers of lawlessness. I never knew you. And this is what the churchgoer is doing. He's hurting himself. He's dangerous to himself, to his neighbour, and to his God.
Do you think, well, you know what, we're getting ready for commercial break, but something for our listeners to ponder while we're taking this commercial is my take on a lot of this is that many people in humanity are just afraid to know thyself, to be secure in who they are. They have to rely on some external savior, either be it Christ, be it Muhammad, be it the ascension, be it aliens in a spaceship. They look for someone else to save them rather than coming to terms with who they are and their salvation's inside.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to take a commercial break. We'll be back in just a minute with more of Santos Bonacci and the Broad Perspective. Stay tuned.
BPN. Join the awakening.
The Broad Perspective Network is a portal designed to reveal a new perspective and reality to those who wish to know the truth about the world we live in and our role in it.
BPN. See beyond the illusion.
Welcome back to The Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Kamori.
And I'm Katie Curley-Nelson.
And we're visiting with Santos Bonacci. We're talking about lots of stuff, astrotheology. We're learning a lot. This information is some of the best out there. We're really grateful to you that you're willing to present it to us. But one question I have, and I'm kind of going to deviate a little bit from our conversation, how did you get to walk down this path? Because this wasn't where you were. What brought you to here?
Great. Yeah, great question. Okay, I'd love to answer that. Just one quick little thing though, because before the break, you were talking about how the churches give us a savior outside of ourselves.
Yes.
This is called vicarious salvation. Vicar.
Yeah.
See, Christ is a vicar. So he's gonna jump in all of a sudden when you're standing before the throne of God, and he's going to sit there and he's going to go, oops, hey, hang on, God. This bloke here, he came to church. This fellow came to church, and he believed in me. And look, don't worry about the fact that he hasn't done anything at all to improve his spirituality and to grow the Christ within. He did have an alcohol problem, and he did bash his wife, and he did cheat and steal and lie, but he believed in me. He's in.
He's in.
Though vicarious salvation, if you're going to believe in that, well, good luck to you. But if you don't got the goods when you get there, you don't climb any higher.
When you say get there, what are you talking about?
Well, that would be the afterlife. That would be now. For instance, people who think about heaven think that it's located somewhere in the universe. Well, it's located in the pineal gland. It's in the crown chakra. As your Kundalini serpent, your electric energy goes up that spine, and you activate your 7 powers, the 7 chakras. You turn the 7 vices into virtues. Then all of a sudden that electric energy climbs higher up your spine, up the silver cord which is spoken of in Ecclesiastes.
Right.
And that energy drives up, and it goes up into the kingdom of the heavens, which is the pineal gland. This is why it's so important to know the zodiac, because when you know the zodiac and the position of Aries and Taurus and Gemini and Cancer and Leo and Virgo, all these constellations are in your body. And Aries and Taurus are in the head of the human being. And in the constellation of Taurus, you'll find the Pleiades, the 7 sisters, the glorious cluster of stars that correspond to your pineal gland. And Aries is the springtime in which Easter is celebrated every year. And that is the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. And that is because when the sun enters Aries, the blossom begins, and that on earth is the seed of the sun. You see, the sun impregnates the earth at that time. It's the symbol of the semen, the orgasm of the sun. In March, Aries, the sign of the lamb, the blossom. Because for 6 months the winter trees had no leaves. They were dead, frozen, waiting for the god to return.
Right.
And when the god returns, he crosses over the equinox on March the 21st, and that is the crossing of the Christ, the Son. Jesus is the Son, and he has crossed over, and that's why they celebrate the Passover lamb. And they eat the Passover lamb because the sun has passed over the equinox and into the sign, and that blossom is the spiritual electric force that begins the season. And then the fruit comes from the blossom, and then the blossom is harvested in the sign of Virgo, the Virgin, the season of harvest. And then in September the fruits are preserved, because down, down, down the sun is falling through the sign of Scorpio and Sagittarius, down to its death in the wintry grave of Saturn, who rules Capricorn on the 21st of December, the solstice. And that cycle, the sun goes down, it dies, and then it's reborn, poof, with the explosion of the blossom in spring. And the fruit season begins again. And this cycle goes on and on and on yearly. And we don't even pay any attention to it because we've been divorced from our religion of these cycles. And we've been told that Jesus was a man who had 12 literal disciples, just like the Gospels say. Well, the Gospels don't say that. The Gospels are talking about astrology and astronomy. And I've proven that in my videos.
So by understanding the... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, I guess I better deal with the question. Did you want me to go in to answer that question you asked me then? Or
that's fine. Or did you want to ask your question? Okay, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Santos.
Yeah, well, how did I get into this path? Well, I knew when as a teenager, when I turned to the Jehovah's Witnesses, I knew that I was on a path to find the truth. I was reading the Bible, and I was a good student of the Bible, and it gave me a lot of wisdom. There's wisdom there, but we astrotheologists, we need to reclaim the Bible from the people who don't understand it at all and who are killing in the name of it. Murdering in the name of the Bible, in fact. And we need to reclaim it because it's great Shakespearean poetry, it's tragedy, it's satire, it is astronomical phenomena, a registry of astronomical phenomena in exquisite, veiled and allegoric form. It's an exquisite book, absolutely exquisite. And I knew there was something really big about this book. And when I read Revelation, I knew that the Jehovah's Witnesses books that interpret the book of Revelation was absolute hogwash. They are absolutely to be pitied, these people, if they believe any of that hogwash of their interpretation for the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is simply about the initiation of St. John. John was a man who wrote down how the Kundalini goes up the spine, right up, and bursts the 7 seals of Revelation, and then he enters into the visions of the kingdom of God. That is in every one of us. We all have that in our domain. Now, I came to understand this because I insisted on turning every stone if I'm going to find the truth. And that answers your question. That's how I came down this path. I saw the movie Zeitgeist about 4 years ago. And because I was an astronomer and I did my research, I had to concur with everything that was in there.
Right.
And then I saw this buffoon who put a video up called Debunking Zeitgeist. And I watched his video and I thought, my God, this guy's a buffoon, a clown. He will go down as the biggest git, the biggest fumbling, bumbling mess of a pathetic repeater fool that ever lived. He's just a repeater of erroneous bullshit. And then came a guy who debunked the debunker. Now that is a film that you must promote and you must get people to see. Because he tears to shreds the buffoon who claims that he's debunked zeitgeist. So all of this enraged me. When I saw this buffoon, I thought, look, I can make a video myself with a blackboard and 4 different coloured textures, and I can make a video on astrotheology that will absolutely it'll make zeitgeist look like, to be honest, it's very, very plain and simple, but it's well done.
Yes.
Well researched. I mean,
yes.
Jordan Maxwell was a lot of input into that, and Acharya S. And right. So Peter Josephs really did a fine job. He's a beautiful young man. He's just so conscious, trying to help people with the truth. Now, my videos, as much as I love that product, Zeitgeist, my videos run rings around it in terms of factual evidence that the Bible is astrotheology.
Yeah, Jordan Maxwell has a new set of videos out. One's called Mazzaroth, and the other one is called, I forget.
Lucifer.
One's called Lucifer,
yes.
And one's called Mazzaroth.
Wow.
Yes, I've seen them. I'm on his newsletter, so I know that those have been released, but I haven't had time to watch them. But I've consumed everything of Jordan Maxwell's, and I respect what he's done. But I must have some criticism of both Michael Vissarion and Jordan Maxwell. I don't think that they dwell on solutions enough, and I don't think they understand the holy science. And they reject astrology. I'm sure of that.
Oh, no, Jordan doesn't at all.
Oh, well, really? Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, no, this is a lot of the same things that you're saying.
He's echoing what you're saying. I go down to...
No, but I mean... but what I mean is that astrology is the science of as above, so below.
Yeah, no,
when one understands all of the planets in their birth chart, then one understands who one is. That's right. the kind of astrology I'm teaching, which is the only science of as above, so.
And that's what I was going to ask a little while ago. Is that so? What you're saying is by understanding the macrocosm of it all, you're understanding the microcosm within yourself, right?
Yes.
And when we understand our own birth chart, which I do want to address, and I don't think we're going to have time on this show, because we're going to do another show with Santos, so next week you'll get to hear the continuation of this. But understanding our own birth charts is really significant when we understand our place in that macrocosm. Correct?
That's right. That's right.
Oh.
That is knowing the truth. Direct knowledge, not opinion, not belief.
And that's knowing thyself.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, now I want to say, because we're running out of time for this show, and for our listeners, reminding you that we will continue this on next week's show. So if you want to learn more, you can go to www.universaltruthschool.com. That's your website, right, Santos?
That's the website, yes. And Mr. Astrotheology is my YouTube site, where I have 7 astrotheological videos and 1 dealing with law and reclaiming dominion and being a sovereign.
And you can also get the key on there, correct?
Well, the key is one of the 7. Yes,
okay.
That's the first one I did, in which I explained the key of nature, which will unfold all of the sciences before your eyes. You will have direct knowledge of all the sciences with that key. And then I built on that with a series called The Key to the Holy Science. And then the next series of 2 was called As Above, So Below. And the final series is called Know Thyself series.
Right. And they're all good. I think I've seen most of them. And I've had to see some of them 2-3 times, some even more than that, because I'm a slow learner. Sometimes with this type of information, I have to.
But you learn something every time.
I
it
do.
Seems like,
oh,
you know
I
what
do.
I mean?
I do. I really have to. I have to study it hard. But we're grateful for this information, and we're about out of time. So, Santos, we want to say thank you for joining us this week. Stay tuned, listeners. Next week, we'll be back with more of Santos.